Welcome to another episode of Brownie Breakdown. Spencer German, Anthony Moeglin with you as we take a look at a unique episode of this show because we're not breaking down Browns tape. We're actually breaking down some Buffalo Bills tape as we look at what the Browns are getting in their new offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey. Excited to be here with you. It's been an interesting week, obviously, with the announcement, the official announcement of Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator. He had his introductory press conference. Didn't really give much context into the things that he wants to do or likes to do. So you're going to have to take a wait and see approach with that. But that's the point of this episode. I think it's fun that we get to do stuff like this, Anthony, and a kind of a cool opportunity to take a look at some of the tendencies that we saw from the game tape for the Bills in Buffalo and what he could be bringing to the table here in Cleveland, with the caveat as well that we don't even know if he's going to be fully calling the plays or not, if it's going to be Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, awesome call by you. We got to give a shout out at the beginning of this because it's a great idea by you. Not an idea by me. Got to give it up to you there. But really good opportunity here too, because a lot of us, we see stuff on Twitter. You read different things, and really what it comes down to is it's just kind of getting into it. What does he like to do? What is Ken Dorsey good at when he is calling plays, and what's he been successful with? There's certainly some things to like about it and reasons to be optimistic. And I think there's certainly reasons to be cautious, but in my opinion, and we'll dive into a lot more of the details of it. In my opinion, this marriage between Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey potentially could be one that makes a ton of sense. Where Ken Dorsey is kind of like the madman who's like going to chuck that thing deep and really wants to take shots, where Kevin Stefanski has been traditionally more conservative, more run the ball, more play, kind of a possession type of a football game. And we've seen that over the years. This marriage between the two has the potential to kind of unlock a side that both of them really don't have. So it's a really exciting proposition when you think about it in the big picture sense.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about it for sure throughout the breakdown here, but the opportunity to air it out a little bit more, take some shots deep, that was something that I think was missing at times this year. I think Andrew Berry tried to sort of address that need for more of a deep threat wide receiver with Marquise Goodwin, and that just didn't really ever come to fruition. I think Elijah Moore was supposed to be more like the speedy, that he could be a downfield guy at times for you, and that didn't really come to fruition. So that plays more into like personnel and what they decide to do this offseason, which is more stuff we can get into at another date. But for now, just kind of getting the sense of what that looks like and what he's tried to do in the downfield game before, I think is going to be key, especially for a quarterback like Deshaun Watson who wants to do those things. So I'm going to let you sort of have the floor here to start us off. I know you've sort of picked some different game tape from different games, both from 2022 and 2023. So I'm interested to kind of see where you pulled here, and we'll talk through it. I know we've both gone back and watched some of the tape in general, and it's going to be a nice dynamic because I think you feel pretty good about what the Browns are getting, and I'm a little bit more cautious, I think, and I think that's kind of how the fan base feels about this overall too. It's kind of a mixed bag at this point.
Certainly, and there's a couple things. There's a couple key themes here that I'm going to want to kind of highlight. One thing that I really love about a Ken Dorsey offense is the motions that he uses. We've come to really get used to seeing stagnant offenses. Okay. And when we watch on Sunday, we're all going to be watching the Super Bowl. The Chiefs and the 49ers lead the league in using motion in a pre-snap form. I personally, in my opinion, love using motion. It makes the defense communicate. It tells the quarterback what he's going to get when he's looking across the field. So it gives a lot of signals as to what you're going to receive from the defense from that perspective. So you'll see a lot of motion. One thing I don't like is Ken Dorsey's run game. I think that we'll get into it here, and there's explanations behind it, and there's proof behind it too. When he left Buffalo, the Bills' run game skyrocketed and took off. I don't like how he used the quarterback run game, but I do think that his play action passes and his deep ball passes are going to be such an improvement to the Cleveland offense. So a couple themes here. Well, I broke it down into certain categories. So we'll start with the runs to get it going. We'll get into some RPO stuff. We'll get into some play action stuff, and then we'll get into some drop back things. But I also pulled games from last year. So we'll get a couple games from last year and a couple games, both good and bad, from this year before he was let go in Buffalo. So to get it started, this is week 1. of 2022 or 2022. It's just Thursday night football against the Rams. The Rams coming off their Super Bowl. And this was the first drive of the game. If you remember, the Bills went into LA and just thumped the Rams. They took care of business in a big way. But one thing here that I just loved really off the start is, like I said, I don't love his motion or his run game, but you see a good clip here of using motion to change the strength of the formation, and then using a guy like this. Imagine this being one of our tight ends coming in motion. And getting a kind of a running start and becoming that lead blocker. I think this is a decent concept here. And really not many good ones, but something that, like, hey, we don't really utilize kind of that toss, and we really don't utilize motion in our run game. And I think that's something that, as we get down the road, could be something that we really improve on.
I also feel like Dorsey shows a lot more zone running versus the Browns. They have two really good interior guards in Wyatt Teller and Joe Bitonio, and they like to get those guys kind of lead blocking out on the outside. So it's a lot more pulling, more of the gap scheme stuff than the zone scheme stuff coming from Buffalo to Cleveland. But again, we'll talk more in depth about the run game, but I think that was something that I picked up on as well.
Yeah, and it's a really, really good point about the using that zone stuff. And we talked about it, spent throughout the year of like, hey, when we got rolling, it was all because of gap scheme stuff. And even before the Chiefs and the Ravens game, a lot of the kind of the large medias out there, the talking heads, if you will, really referenced that the Chiefs are the last team to really take it to the Ravens was the Browns, and they utilized a ton of gap scheme. Kyle Long talked about this at length of like, hey, you're going to be able to get after that Ravens defense running with that gap scheme style stuff. You saw the Chiefs execute that, but one place to really improve is that zone scheme here. And you see a really good clip here. Again, they're kind of flipping formation, but you see a really good clip. This is going to be more of that gap scheme where you get this pooler, but we've been unable to really execute the shotgun run. That's been one that's not been great for us. We're really good at a running from under center, but when we get in the shotgun, it's not great. Here's a really good clip of just being in shotgun, having all your threats outside, and then using that gap scheme stuff, which we're good at, to really get a big chunk run here. And you see, too, one of the themes of a Ken Dorsey offense, and you'll see this consistently, is watch here in the slot. There's always a pass option in every one of his run plays, whether it's called upon, whether it's thrown, whether Stephon Diggs just didn't want to block. Like, that's all could be part of it. But there's always an option to throw the football. All right, very next play in this game. This was the Vikings game. We remember the ending of it. Justin Jefferson making that crazy
catch. Yeah, and then was it Josh Allen fumbled at the one? And that was insane. Absolutely
I will say this: we were talking about this before we went live. We had our fair share of turnover issues this year, and a lot of it was very frustrating. The Josh Allen experience is insane. I mean, this guy is like totally he's reckless with the football. He's amazing. He's he's a top 3 quarterback in all of the league. But this dude will go at all lengths to make a play, regardless of the health of the football.
And we'll talk more about that too, with in relation to Ken Dorsey's role in that, because I know people look and say, "Well, how can you blame Ken Dorsey for a turnover?" But I think there's a point that I want to make on just the coaching side of things that we can get to as well.
Yep. Okay, so you see here this clip started with Gabe Davis. He's a name to, if you're a Browns fan, keep circled. Getting rumored to come to Cleveland, but you see him kind of motioning down, becoming that attached man on the line of scrimmage, and a very similar play, Spence, but exactly to your point. Last time we had this shotgun run where we got this pulling guard coming across. This time you're going to get that zone style look where we got double teams up to linebackers. We got double teams in here up to linebackers. We got a one-on-one here. Then we got Gabe Davis who attached and is going to block here. This is your typical zone look here, right? One-on-one there, your combos inside. And then you're letting your running back, imagine Nick Chubb, just being able to pick his hole and really find the end zone. But it's so good when you can run this type of stuff out of the shotgun and you still have you still can get up top and have this threat up top, but also have a really good run game inside.
And one thing we notice, and it's been a big talking point about Dorsey, is just the run game getting better in terms of James Cook's usage and his effectiveness after he left this season. I think there's some negatives just in general about Dorsey's run game the last couple of years. But I do think one of the positives that I take away from it is what you mentioned, the ability to do more out of the shotgun, because that has been an issue for the Browns in recent years. So if they're able to get that at least going, that's at least a positive sign from the running standpoint that I take away with Dorsey, and we'll see how effective it can be. You'd imagine with a guy like Nick Chubb, it would be really, really impressive and it'll work. But that's maybe the one positive I can give him in terms of the run game sort of woes that they had.
Yeah. And in another area, and we'll get to this here as we start to get to the pass game stuff. Like you can see, I had 3 clips of run games. Like there wasn't much good in the run game, but I do believe that there is some stuff that he can bring. But he did love to use the running backs in the passing game. And I didn't particularly love the usage of it. And you'll see kind of a clip here of like almost a wasted play and one that you kind of want back. But it leads you to believe like what is going to be, obviously we're going to have Nick Chubb, but who's Cleveland going to look to bring in this kind of scat back role, some kind of more athletic guy who can get out in space, maybe has a touch better hands than Nick Chubb to kind of do this type of stuff, because this became a big portion of the Bills offense. A lot of this throw to the running back. This is actually a wide receiver who motioned into the backfield and we flipped it out to him. But a lot of this stuff, right? Throws behind the line of scrimmage, trying to get, free yards, almost an extension of the run game, because their run game was so bad. And this wasn't a good answer for them. And that's something that I particularly loved out of the Ken Dorsey offense. All right. The next one. And this is something that Browns fans can really relate to. Okay. Our quarterback run game kind of cost us our season, right? When you look at the last 6 teams in the playoffs, all of them had their quarterback for the entire season. Okay. So that means no injuries from their guys playing quarterback. Obviously ours had a broken shoulder off of a designed quarterback run play. Now I know, Spence, this is one side that you feel very passionate about, that, he really did not use Josh Allen well in the run game. You'll see a couple clips here, but wanted to, kind of let you talk on that a little bit.
I think first of all, and Josh Allen isn't Deshaun Watson. I think that's important to establish ahead of time. I think Josh Allen's like 245. Deshaun's more like 220. Like they're not the same. You're not going to use Josh Allen the same way you would use Deshaun Watson in that. Like, I get Ken Dorsey talked about on Monday that it's not really fair to compare Josh Allen to Cam Newton, but I get why that comparison's made, because they both have really big arms. And they both are just like battering rams in the run game. And I think Josh Allen knows that that's a skill set that he has that other guys just don't. And I think it's important to use that. Dorsey this year didn't really utilize Josh Allen in that way. And so there's a lot of sort of misinformation. I don't want to say misinformation, but there's a lot of, I guess, different answers as to why that was the case. Some people have argued maybe Sean McDermott told him like not to use him as much as a runner because he's trying to protect him for the whole season. Others just thought that on his own, he kind of assumed, I got to protect Josh Allen, so I'm not going to use him as a runner as much. But you'll notice if you go back and watch the tape yourself, like he got better and he was utilized more as a runner in the second half of the season, those last 7 games, and it paid dividends for the offense as a whole. So it's an important skill set for Josh Allen. I don't know why he wouldn't have wanted to utilize it more, because it is something that made that offense a lot better. What that means for Deshaun Watson, I don't fully know. We know he likes to do a lot of RPO stuff. So I'm imagining that's part of bringing him in, is you're going to have to use Deshaun as a runner. I mean, that's just a guarantee. Now, the interesting thing with that is Josh Allen hasn't had, knock on wood for Bills fans, any serious injuries to this point in his career, versus Deshaun now is coming off of a very, very major one that we don't even know like if it's going to affect his throwing shoulder, what it's going to mean. And so on some level, you almost have to protect Deshaun Watson from taking more serious hits or from getting hurt again. So this one's a mystery for me. I don't know if it's going to be, let's protect Deshaun Watson. I don't know if it's going to be, let's use him too much in the run game. There's going to be some of that involved because you have to. You can't have Deshaun Watson as your quarterback without doing some of that stuff. But this is one of the 8 major areas of concern for me. And it was weird because coming from, Dorsey's history is Cam Newton, Josh Allen. And Cam Newton, they never feared using Cam Newton as a runner ever. Like that was his game, was throwing the ball downfield and running the football, and they never shied away from doing it. So it was weird to see him sort of not utilize Josh Allen like that this past season. We'll never probably get a good answer on it, but I'm curious to see what that means for Deshaun Watson, who, with the context of you also have to protect him. How much is he going to use him? How much isn't he going to use him? I'm fascinated to see that for sure.
Well, it's also, part of the consideration potentially is like, what was the harm that happened to Cam Newton, right? Because he had that big, MVP season, and then it was like a swift, steady decline after that. So you never know like how that potentially factored in. But like stuff like this, like you said,
and Cam had the rotator cuff, I think, is what his injury was. So it's a little bit different than Deshaun's. Deshaun's was the glenade fracture. So and that's the other thing. I think maybe one of my biggest concerns for Deshaun in general is that we don't have a lot of examples in sports history, football, baseball, whatever, of somebody suffering a glenoid fracture and then coming back. So he's kind of a guinea pig, if you will, or a test case on can a quarterback come back from this thing and be effective. And it's kind of a wait and see thing. Yeah. But the Browns are going into this season. It's a big one for Deshaun. They have to start to see the payoff of this deal they gave him and the trade they made. And you got to get everything out of him that you can talent wise, but you also need to balance keeping him upright, because if you don't, then your season's shot anyway. So it's an interesting dynamic.
We're back to Joe Flacco at that point, because because here's the deal. Like this play we're going to watch here, this is a great, like, in my opinion, this is like a great high school and college play.
This was from 2022, right? This one?
This is 2022.
Okay.
You're reading this guy right here, and this is kind of littered throughout, but this is called a power read, okay? We're going to combo block everybody inside. We're going to get a pulling tackle, here. And then the quarterback's reading this defensive end. So if this defensive end crashes, we hand to the running back and he's out the gate. If he stays put, the quarterback keeps and follows his pulling tackle right here. So you'll see here Josh's eyes. Look, Leonard Floyd, that is, stays put. He's like, all right, perfect. I'm going to pull this. Now, this hole, in theory, is really, really big, and we're going to get a nice gain on it. But this is the NFL. Like, these guys can close gaps quickly and really, cause havoc fast. So this is a good play in theory, and I like this. But this is one where it's like, hey, if there's a linebacker that doesn't get blocked or is available, this is a big hit, because this is your quarterback running in between the tackles. It's scary to run in between the tackles, especially when you got a kind of a fragile guy like we do. This is a good example here. This is one where it's like, hey, we're going to use the quarterback run. This is against the Steelers, again, in 2022. But this one is a really good look at just a total quarterback design run, right? We're going to get a little motion. This guy's like a fullback here. He's coming across. We're just going to token fake. And this is a straight quarterback run, okay? Probably schemed up, supposed to be good. But Cam Hayward makes a big play and just body slams, right? Body slams Josh Allen, who, like you said, 250 pounds. Like, this shouldn't happen to a 250-pounder, but, it does. And your quarterback, we just really have to be cautious in the quarterback run game of shots like that.
How does an offensive coordinator, how does a play caller manage protecting a quarterback while also utilizing that skill set? And some of it is the quarterback has to protect himself. Like, the quarterback has to slide. We know that was an issue with RG3. There's been other examples. But what are some ways that an offensive coordinator can do that?
It's really tough, because like this one, right, they probably scheme this up. And truthfully, Spence, like, you got to have something if, your guard wins here. But like, he gets beat by a guy who's potentially a gold jacket later on, in his career here. But like, you got to, like, it's such a reliance on the quarterback, because at some point, you can have the best play in the world, but if something breaks down, you have to protect yourself. And giving yourself the opportunity to do so, it then falls on the offensive coordinator. What I mean is, like, in this situation, this is a really hard spot for the quarterback to be like, oh God, I can't go left, I can't go right, I can't go straight. I'm running out of time to even go down, because again, I'm in between the tackles. What you'd like to see is, like, we'll get into it. There's some sprint out stuff where the quarterback has the option to pass it and run it, right? When he's getting out of the pocket, trying to really move the pocket. I really like that read that we showed on that last play, where you're creating a numbers advantage to one side, so that, hey, if it looks good, your eyes aren't going to deceive you. Okay. So like, hey, if my read tells me to go, I'm going, because there's numbers there, and you can really protect yourself there. Like the straight design runs, like where the quarterback has no other option. I think if I'm Kevin Stefanski, that's the first thing I'm throwing out of the playbook. Like, we're not even going to have that. because for our guy, he's not getting up from this hit. He's just not going to get up from that hit or get up healthy, So it's like, hey, you have to give him another out, whether that out is throwing the ball or whether that out is handing it off on a run. Like, he has to have a two-way go at all times.
So that's a good way to look at it. And again, Josh Allen might be able to get away with more of that type of stuff, the design QB runs. I think for the Browns, it might be something they should be weary of. I think that's a good perspective to have.
All right. So some of the run stuff that, like I said, not so high on, but there's some things that, I think that the Browns can take to really improve their offense. But we're going to start getting into some stuff here that I really think could change the way the Browns offense is run. And this first one here, these next two clips, we're just going to look at him on third down. This is 3rd and long here. You'll see here's the line of scrimmage. Here's the first down. And oftentimes you hear of, the saying is Jimmy's and Joe's, not X's and O's. Like, you could have the best play drawn up, but if you're not going to the right guy in the big spot, you're not going to convert the first down or move the chains or whatever you got to do. So, really good job here. And this is just something that we didn't see much of, whether it was because our personnel was so banged up or because there was just a lack of creativity in the pass game. You didn't really see the Browns taking advantage of matchups. Okay. So we put Stephon Diggs in the slot. This is your number one guy here. You got Gabe Davis outside. Gabe Davis is down here. And then you got two deep runners here. But basically what we're doing here is matching up Stephon Diggs on Robert Spillane, who's a linebacker. Spillane comes back in another clip. He doesn't like playing the Bills, but they just kind of pick on him here. You're going to see a little whip route here by Stephon Diggs, and it's just a really good, hey, we know we're getting man coverage or some kind of a matchup zone, and we're going to exploit the defense and do something, that they just simply cannot cover. So you go vertical on the outside, and then you let Diggs win off a linebacker. And it's just a simple thing like that, which when I say it out loud, it makes perfect sense. Why doesn't everybody do it? Well, you have to have the right call at the right time, and you have to execute it very, very well. But I just think like stuff like this matchup kind of stuff is going to be something that the Browns really start to take huge advantage of, in the years to come, I guess. Good clip there, and almost an exact replica of a very similar play, right? A little bit different formation, but this isn't quite Stephon Diggs, but still, you're going to go speed on a linebacker and get something just like this where we get vertical, and we just need to move the sticks, win on a linebacker, and you're going to be able to do so. Just, again, another third down. I think that's important. It's going to come up in a little bit here. We're going to hit on another point, but just another good job of, hey, we're going to use matchups to convert first downs. I think that's something that the Browns kind of lacked, in their passing game. All right, this is a fun one. I don't think this one's anything special, but it's always good to show touchdowns against the Steelers. But this is just a cool play because this is one where it's like, hey, if the Browns can go out in free agency and get another legit, like, kind of big play threat, and maybe it is Gabe Davis, maybe it's not, but somebody who can also stretch the field on the other side of Amari Cooper, I think that this opens stuff up like this, where not specifically this exact situation, but just gives more of a deep threat opportunity. So they just go max pro. They put 7 guys in protection, and they just let one rip here. And we get a 93-yard touchdown to, hopefully, maybe potentially a future Cleveland Brown, but Gabe Davis. But the point really is, hey, this can happen when you just max pro it and you let your quarterback with a massive arm just try to go let one rip. And if it falls incomplete, it falls incomplete. But if it doesn't, you get a massive play out of it, and the Bills get a big one here.
Yeah, I remember that play.
Yeah, that was good. I remember looking like, holy cow. I think he had 2. I think at one point Gabe Davis was like 2 catches for like 150 yards. Or something crazy insane. Like that. All right. Some of the more technical stuff, right? That was a little fun play. I think his Ken Dorsey's play action pass game was pretty darn good. And why I think that this obviously matches up beautifully with what the Browns do is when we can run the ball, we can get under center and run the football. This opens up a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And let's face it, the play action game was basically the bread and butter of their offense for the last 5-6 games when Joe Flacco took over. I mean, that's the baseline West Coast offense type stuff that Kevin Stefanski was doing. It worked really well with Joe Flacco. So if you can kind of blend the two ideas here, Kevin Stefanski's offense with what Ken Dorsey wants to do, maybe airing it out a little bit further downfield and different things. I think there certainly is some positive things that can happen there.
Absolutely. And you'll see stuff like this. There's a lot. Again, right, Spence, we're using motion here, right? I mean, does this look similar to that play we showed where it's we're going to use motion? All right, instead of flipping it, we're going to now we got a deep passing concept, okay? And one of the things here you'll see up top, it seems to me now, I don't know if it's coached this way, but when you can block it up like this and you can give your quarterback a bunch of time because of the threat of the run game, it allows your receivers to not freestyle, but have a two-way go on a route. So the way this looks to me is that, hey, if you, whoever this receiver is, if you can beat your guy, go beat him, right? Go deep and go. But if he's on top of you, shut it down, and we got to come back also. So it's like a feel route, and this is it's common in the pros, but it's just something that maybe the Browns didn't really utilize much because whether it was because we couldn't block anything because we were so beat up, or we just didn't really have it in the playbook. Like this is definitely a deep shot where I've never seen a 5, 10, 15, 20. Yeah, it's about a 20-yard comeback, which is a monster route and a monster throw here. But it's something that because this offense is so vertically driven that, hey, if you can win, go win. But if you can't, shut that thing down and be an option for your quarterback. Don't just keep running because you're just running yourself way out of the play.
And let's face it, when you have Josh Allen throwing you the football, he can make that throw. Like it takes having the right quarterback to do stuff like that too.
Absolutely. And it's like, hey, if he starts here, he can stay on this side. He doesn't have to come through a progression to kind of get off of it. He can stay there and have a two-way go with his receiver. Obviously, I don't know if that ended up being a catch as I saw that ball rolling around, but it's just another option that they can have. And here you go. Look at this. You got your entire offense, 11 guys within, 7 yards of each other, a full big house package that we use a little bit of emotion. And this is the one I love. I love stuff like this, where this gives the perception of, hey, we're going to throw this thing deep because we've been running past you all game. And then instead, this is almost like an extended screen where these guys take these guys out and these linebackers are flying out because they see play action. And then we just drop it right down to our running back who's in the flat, untouched. And look, Spence, too, like this is look at the yard marker here. You got second in inches, okay? This is like prime shot territory. So we come off that play action hard. We go deep, and then drop that thing right down to our running back here and let him go and let James Cook really try to make a big play down the field. I think stuff like this is really good in a place where this Browns offense can continue to grow. Like, hey, use the deep threats after you start hitting them. Use them as decoys. Drop this thing down. Nick Chubb catches this thing in the flat. He's going to work. And finishing strong. That was a good finish there by Cook. All right, a couple more play actions here. This is a really good one. This is similar to one that burnt us when we were down in Houston, but you're going to get Stephon Diggs up at the top of your screen. This is a very common route that really, we didn't really execute very well, but it's an option here for Cleveland here as we continue to kind of grow some of our pass game. So this route on the bottom, this post, whatever it was, just gets beat up, right? This guy just gets bullied off the line of scrimmage, so he's automatically out. Okay, so you have a crosser coming into your screen, and this is just a very simple, we're going to max pro this thing up and let our number one go be a number one route coming off of a play action and really working to get open. This game here was an interesting one. This was the Giants game from this year. This actually may have been Dorsey's last game in Buffalo.
No, he was there through the Denver game.
Okay, Denver, also not
came five games later.
Okay, so a little bit later in the season, but
4 games later, yeah.
This game against the Giants was one of their worst offensive outputs. They scored 14 points and it was really couldn't get anything going down the field, but it's plays like this where, it's big shot plays coming off of play action where if your play action game is quality and you can do that, that's always a positive. One thing here, this next clip and let you take over a little bit, but to this point, we haven't seen any tight ends. One of the things that he really struggles with, the Ken Dorsey offense really struggles with, is the use of the tight end and getting the tight end involved. We get one here, but it's just not something that his offense really caters to. It's more of that deep threat stuff kind of down the sidelines to the receivers, and nothing really inside to the tight ends.
Yeah, and it's a little deceiving. Like if you look at just the box scores, I pulled this up a little bit earlier today. Like Kincaid, who was one of their top picks last year, in 9 games with Dorsey, he had 51 targets, 45 receptions, 390 yards. He averaged 8.67 yards per reception. In 7 games under Joe Brady, he had 40 targets, 28 receptions, 283 yards, and 10 yards per reception. So he had about 100 yards less in 2 less games, but his yards per reception were higher. It's not so much like a just look at the numbers thing, but you notice just it stands out that he didn't necessarily look to the here's the way I'll put it. And this is how it's been described to me by multiple people who also covered this team regularly, are on the beat for the Bills. Ken Dorsey is a number 1 wide receiver's dream because, like you've been highlighting, he likes to take shots downfield. He likes to utilize that number 1 receiver. And if you do go look at box scores of like Stephon Diggs' numbers in the first half plus of the season when he was there versus the second sort of home stretch of the season, there's an exponential difference. Like he was getting targeted a lot more. His usage went down. That was a big topic of conversation nationally, was why is Stephon Diggs not being used as much as he went out of Buffalo? That whole thing kind of popped back up again. And so, yeah, like for Amari Cooper, it's great. But when you have this Browns offense that has Nick Chubb, that has David Njoku, that potentially is going to add another weapon this offseason, you got to make the most of that. And so this is another one of those areas that for me just kind of raises the eyebrows of like a little bit of a concern. And listen, I'm not trying to be like, poo-poo Ken Dorsey. I understand there's context to everything. We don't know all the ins and outs of the situation in Buffalo. We don't know everything he's going to bring to the table, and we kind of have to see it. And like sometimes a fresh start can be good for anybody, and he has some different ideas, and maybe working with Stefanski unlocks some things for him. That's all great. But all I can go off of right now is what we've seen. And I walk away from his time in Buffalo feeling like there were some things missing that I think are important to what the Browns need to do. I understand this is mostly about the quarterback, and you trust on some level that Dorsey's going to be able to do that because he's worked with some of the best quarterbacks in certain eras of this sport. But I'm just a little hesitant because the tight end thing concerns me. The how he's going to use Deshaun as a runner or not use Deshaun as a runner sort of concerns me. And then what this means for an offense that has other weapons that are outside of just their top receiver, I think concerns me a little bit too.
Absolutely. And with the Browns specifically, like David Njoku's a critical part of the offense. And it's like, hey, he is going to be like this offense doesn't function without David Njoku. So like it's like how can Ken Dorsey being he there, how can he adjust and what can him and Kevin Stefanski do to like, hey, this is some things you were good at, the play action stuff, and we'll get into some of the deep shots here, but this is some places we have to grow, and maybe the places that Kevin Stefanski then jumps in is like, hey, I'm very good at getting the ball to my tight ends. I'm very good at my run game. My run game's not changing, but we're just going to incorporate your concepts, your play action concepts into it. That stuff. Like, how do they marry each other?
And some of that shotgun run game stuff that the Browns have struggled with. Like if Dorsey can help unlock that a little bit more, that's an encouraging thing. And this is, again, we don't know the full picture of what this is going to look like yet. Obviously, Stefanski was the one who kind of introduced Ken Dorsey on Monday, and he tried to clear the air, although he didn't clear the air because he didn't answer. But he said, it's February 5th. We're not ready to talk about play calling yet, but we'll get there. Like we don't know who's going to be the primary play caller, but they always talk about being collaborative. So I would imagine on some level there's going to be some mixing and matching going on, and then we just have to get a firm answer on like who's actually calling the plays.
Yeah. No question about it. And this is a big reason as to why you bring in a guy like Ken Dorsey. It's this RPO game. Like, this is one thing that this is not Kevin Stefanski's strong suit. And it's truthfully not Alex Van Pelt's strong suit. And this is why you make changes like this, because Deshaun Watson in this run game is so electric and it's so elite. Like, you have to be able to capitalize when teams commit more to the run, and you have to be able to throw off the run. There's going to be a couple, and won't speed through it, but it's just so good to understand, like, hey, why are RPOs effective? Like, you see them give one here. Why is an RPO effective? Well, Josh Allen's reading this linebacker here. If we had the back view, you would see his helmet is looking straight at him. If this linebacker commits to the run, he's throwing this ball right here on like a little hitch route or maybe even like a little seam route and taking advantage of a linebacker who is overzealous to the run game because it's Nick Chubb running the football, right? You have to get a step on it. Well, because he stays right here, you just block the guy with your quarterback's eyes and running a route. And this is why RPOs are so effective, because instead of this linebacker making contact with the running back right here in the hole, he's now 6, 7, 8 yards away, and the running back has a full head of steam and buries him, gives him really the business at the end. And like, that's what an RPO does. It's not like this crazy thing where it's like this such a hard concept, right? You look at one guy, if he makes a move to the offensive line, you throw it. If he stays put, you give it, and you get advantages like this in the run game, which is something Cleveland really could use and capitalize on. Here's a good example of him throwing. So same thing, Spence, right? The read is now right here, okay? If this guy makes one move towards that line of scrimmage, you have this route and I think maybe a slant or maybe some kind of a hitch behind it. But watch how quickly this decision's made, right? That ball is out, or he's decided because this guy came right down the line of scrimmage, and we're going to dump it down. Now, here's the hard part about it, right? This could have been a catch, right? Catch and a gain of a couple. This ball gets deflected in the air. It doesn't get intercepted, but it's a nice play by that defensive end. But still, the concept behind it is use the defender's leverage and aggressiveness against them to kind of create space in the passing game.
And I think since we talked about the run game struggling for under Dorsey, I think some of the RPO runs are where you actually saw him have his most success. Like when it was just straight up like handing the ball off, it wasn't as effective, but his RPO stuff seemed to be where he got his running backs in the most advantageous situations. And even sometimes Josh Allen, when he did use Josh Allen as a runner.
Yep, absolutely. Here's a good example of it, right? You're reading this guy. He's the closest thing because you're getting a blitz coming off this edge. He's the closest thing to this receiver. He's going to block himself. He's going to sprint out of there. We got numbers, okay? Because why, right? Instead of having to account for this guy in the run game because he's got to get out to cover here and you're blitzing off the edge. When we run this way, we have numbers, okay? We got probably a little 2-for-1 here up to a linebacker. You're going to get a combo here, making sure you take care of this up to a linebacker. You're going to get a one-on-one on the backside and then some kind of a reach up to the second level. But they block a guy with just his alignment. And look at this. You get a massive run play. And none of that, the running back didn't have to do much there. That was all scheme. They just created numbers based off of an RPO look and got Pittsburgh in a blitz. And it's just something that if Cleveland can implement into their system, could be really good for them. All right. I'll get off the RPOs because I want to get to some of the I went a little RPO crazy, as you can see in the top left.
I get it. And I mean, I think it's an important thing to certainly look at because, again, that's an element that they need to incorporate more of with Deshaun Watson under center. And it is one of the things I actually feel better about with Dorsey coming here than some of the other things that we've already mentioned. Like the RPO stuff should be better with Dorsey's either input or him calling the plays. So I feel good about that.
And too, it's not even just an advantageous for Deshaun Watson. It's advantageous for Nick Chubb and whoever the second running back is going to be. Like, when you can run with an advantage in just a straight numbers advantage because the defense has to defend the pass. That's huge. We see what Nick Chubb does when he's got guys on his feet who are coming at him, right? When he's got the momentum going towards him and he's got a full head of steam, he's a hard guy to tackle. All right. My favorite thing that I'm most excited about with Dorsey is kind of that big play and how it's gonna balance out, with Kevin Stefanski. The way that I look at it, I've said it a number of times, but if it was on a spectrum, Ken Dorsey's on one side where it's like I'm the crazy shot play guy, like I'm just going to try to chuck that thing up, and Kevin Stefanski's on totally the other side where it's like I want to play conservative, protect the football. So if they can meet somewhere in the middle, I think that's good things for the Cleveland Browns. And some of their drop back stuff is great. In my opinion, like you can kind of see here, it comes off of a little bit of emotion to that stack. And one of the concepts and this is just a general a general football concept is you should take one big shot per quarter, like one deep throw per quarter for a number of reasons, right? It's for pass interference. You see the flag fly in there. Boom. It's for if you connect on it, you hit a big play. And it's for just keeping the defense honest, right? If you try to run by them, they're going to have to account for that and defend for that in the future. So the kind of the rule of thumb is one shot play per quarter. And you get stuff like this to happen, whether he catches it or not. Now you got first and goal at the 1 yard line because, hey, we came out of a timeout or whatever it was. We took a shot towards the end zone and tried to make a big play. And some of the things I love, what I used to hate with the Browns, and not used to hate, what I do hate with the Browns is like anytime they got in the shotgun and it was like, hey, if it's empty, they could only throw if it was empty or if it was, they had one tight end attack. Like you knew when they were throwing the football because it was so obvious. Like one of the things that I think Dorsey does really well is mixes in different formations and still throws out of them. And it's just straight drop. Like this is just a straight drop back concept where, hey, I'm taking 3 steps and I'm going to take a shot. Okay. Again, let's say this is an amazing catch, right? This is what we were talking about where he had like 2 or 3 catches for 1 billion yards. But let's say he doesn't even catch that. He makes an amazing catch here. But if this hits the ground, the Steelers are still respecting that, hey, we have to protect everything deep. And when you do that, when you have to play that super shell, you get guys open here. You get a guy who's running right here who's coming open. Like you get openings in the defense because they have to respect that deep passing game that he really likes to deploy. All right. We talked about the running backs earlier. I like this kind of a concept where we use the running back on like a scat play. This is a really good concept, and it's a little bit layered. This is almost like an extended screen again, where you use this coming out this way and you read one guy, right? If he stays in the box, you're going to throw this. If he doesn't and gets depth, you got a slant coming on the backside. And again, it's a numbers game. It's hey, this dude flies out, boom, flip my hips, fire one in there. Simple stuff. Simple, quick, effective. Get the ball to your receivers and go.
I think, another thing I really like about Dorsey's mindset is the motion stuff. Mm-hmm. I just think, you look at the 49ers offense, you look at the Chiefs offense, that stuff is so prudent to have in today's NFL. It can tell you a lot about what the defense is running against you, but it also it sets you up in situations like that, right? Where if that linebacker does stay, you now have a guy that's kind of, you said it earlier, like an extension of the run game, getting the ball to him quickly. And Kevin Stefanski's tried some stuff like that, but it hasn't necessarily been as effective all the time. So I think the idea that that improves and you use motion more is only a positive for this offense as well.
And how many times do we just get into, we get into a set 3x1, 2x2 empty, and it just is there, right? And they don't move and it's stagnant and the defense aligns to it. And then they defend it.
And then they try to run that type of thing where it's like somebody does like a little bubble route and he's trying to throw it to him, but it's covered, and then you're like, well, that wasn't a good play call. Well, yeah, but with the motion, it kind of changes some things and it makes the defense have to react in real time. And that's where you sometimes get mismatches.
Yeah, absolutely. Watch how this motion, the motion makes the defense talk, right? He comes in motion and this safety starts to roll down, right? If he was staying, if he stayed over here, they could have just stayed in that 2 high shell and then rotated at the snap. Well, the defense or the motion makes them talk, right? Makes them tell you exactly what they're doing. He's rolling down. Boom. You're going to get something here. Now I know it's cover 3. Now I know exactly, how I'm going to attack this route and attack this ball. And he stands in there, delivers one right over the middle. Like the motion stuff is something that I really think, again, watch it up here. Doesn't have to be a lot. Just moving from outside right into a stack and let's take a shot down the field. Like this is awesome right here. Okay. This is progression with an option. You got chances here. This safety drives right now. He knows like he's stepping up to throw a home run, right? Boom. And he's in there again. This goes back to the shot play. When you take shots down the field, good things happen when it's schemed up right. I just think, when we continue to talk about this drop back passing game, it is going to be so much improved and something that Cleveland can really grow with. And kind of it's going to really help their offense kind of as the, as he gets kind of rolling in here. All right. I'm going to remove that. And that is just a really good, like, hey, what he does is, some of the stuff he does that, we potentially don't really like, some of that run
Yeah.
game stuff can really improve. But some of the things he brings to the table that I think are going to marry really well with Kevin Stefanski are the play action pass. It's going to be the RPO game, and it's going to be some of that drop back game combined with Kevin's use of the run game and his use of like the tight ends and different things like that.
So those are some of the reasons you like Ken Dorsey, and I agree with your sentiments on those things. The motion, I think, is going to be huge. Being able to run out of the shotgun, if he can incorporate that, I think is going to be huge. The RPO stuff, that's a staple to having. I think Deshaun Watson under center, I think that's all good. I listed some of the things earlier that I'm a little concerned about. Why wasn't the run game really? Why did James Cook get better? Why were his touches up and the offense was more effective with him running the football once he left? I have a concern about that. I have a concern just about the fact that his offense is. I want the offense to be more downfield attacking. I do.
Mm-hmm.
Where and I think this is part of this is what I wanted to get into a little bit earlier. Like when you're a good coach to me knows where like a player has a tendency or a weakness or something, and they protect that player from doing that thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think for Josh Allen, we know you brought it up earlier. Like he's kind of a wild guy. He's kind of a wild one. Like he'll throw it up. I think back to like his first year making the playoffs. He threw that pass deep down the field to like a fullback. He was in double coverage. It was to a fullback. Like he's going to take those shots. He's going to try those things. And I think on some level, like Dorsey's offense being centered around let's take shots downfield, that opened up Josh Allen to. I think Josh Allen's mind works like I want that because he knows he's got a cannon for an arm, right? Mm-hmm. So he didn't necessarily protect Josh Allen from that by making the offense centered around like we're going to our number one wide receiver. We're looking downfield. We're throwing it deep all the time. That's our number one priority. And I think you saw, and it kind of reared its head in that Chiefs game in the divisional round. That last drive before they missed the field goal, he was dinking and dunking. He was throwing it over the middle. He was throwing short stuff there, moving the ball down the field. And then after it was either the 2-minute warning or a timeout. I think it was the 2-minute warning. They came back out, and what did he do? He took like 2 or 3 straight shots to the end zone. And that's what Josh Allen wants. He wants those shots downfield. He wants to take the big shot. And then that put them in a less advantageous situation where they were having a longer field goal and it made it a little bit harder. And then pass misses it. We know how that all plays out. Yeah. So, and the reason I bring this up is because similarly, I think Deshaun wants that. I think he wants to attack downfield more. I think that probably is generally more so what he's used to from his time in Houston even. But to this point, I've argued that I think there's something between the ears with Deshaun where I think he wants it all back at once. And this is more getting into like just the psyche of football, I guess. But like, I think he wants to restore his reputation. I think he wants to like prove everybody he's still got it. I think he wants to do all these things on like one big play chunks at a time. But what worked for him best this year, right? That when you think back to that Ravens game, 14 of 14, 134 yards and a touchdown in the second half. It was a lot of just taking what was there and not overthinking it. And so I worry a little bit about that dynamic, even though I think it's something Deshaun needs to get to be able to do, and it's going to benefit him. I also worry, like, is he setting him up to be in that same situation as Josh Allen, who, by the way, his turnovers dropped I don't want to say substantially, but he cut his turnovers almost like a little bit more than in half, a little bit less than in half. Once Dorsey was gone, he had far less, and he wasn't necessarily taking more risks, if you will, with the ball, which I think is notable as you look at the pre versus post Dorsey in Buffalo.
And I think too, like that is going to be why the actual play caller, whoever that is so important because where I love Ken Dorsey is like what he can bring. Like if we were able to Frankenstein this together, it's like I would take Kevin Stefanski's run game. I would take Kevin Stefanski's screen game. I would take his use of the tight ends and David Njoku and those types of guys. And then I would take Ken Dorsey's deep passing game. I would take Ken Dorsey's RPO game, and I would take, his play action game, if you will. And if you could just piece it together and then let Kevin Stefanski call those plays, I think that hits on your point of like why Kevin Stefanski is such a good coach is he tries his best to protect his players from themselves. Like we got to points this year where the turnovers were just happening. Like it just was happening. PJ Walker was turning over. DTR was turning over. Flacco, like,
well, and I think too, on some level this year, like you got to a point where it's like, we're on our fourth quarterback. Like, let's just, whatever happens, happens. Like, we're just trying to survive here,
So it's like the things that you said that are concerning about Ken Dorsey is like, absolutely. Like he even said it he was on Cleveland Browns Daily. And he even said it. He's like, you got to kind of take the good with the bad, with some of those big play quarterbacks, which yes, there's truth in that. But when your quarterback's leading the league in turnovers, like at some point you got to like put the red flag up and be like, hey, something's wrong here, dude. Like quit chucking this thing. So I think what concerns me about him is what makes me excited that, Kevin Stefanski potentially calling those plays has that thing where it's like, hey, Deshaun's not feeling it today, or he hasn't thrown this well, or whatever. We're not going to force this. Let's just get back in the rhythm, whatever. So it's like if they can match up and really combine and make, and kind of create the offense together, I think that there's some good things that could come from it. But your concerns are certainly like, hell yeah.
And listen, I mean, the one of the buzzwords in Berea is collaborative. They bring that up all the time. If this is a collaborative thing like that, and it ends up being Stefanski calling the plays, like maybe there'll be a little less, I don't even want to say like worry, but just like concern in terms of what this thing's going to look like and uneasiness. Like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? What do we get? What are the Browns getting with Ken Dorsey? I'm curious. Is I think maybe the best way to put it, or a good way to put it. I like there's some things I'm really concerned about. Like I've talked to some people who again covered this team, and they brought up the fact that Josh Allen's worst 2 years in Buffalo were under Ken Dorsey, and he was better with Dable before that. He was better with Joe Brady after that. So I think that's notable. There's people who kind of said like, I can't tell you like from a overall system standpoint, like what Ken Dorsey's like overall scheme is. Like it's kind of a mix and match of things, and you don't really know what the end goal is all the time. So, and I think the fact that Sean McDermott alluded to trying to get a change of energy when he moved on from Ken Dorsey, that's interesting to me too, especially on the heels of hearing Albert Breer share that Alex Van Pelt was apparently like the glue guy in the offensive room, right? Like if he's bringing the team together, you don't want to disrupt some of that and bring somebody else in who maybe doesn't jive with the rest of the team. So I'm weary. I am cautiously optimistic. Like I see what they're trying to do here. I think it's important that they're trying to cater the offense even more to Deshaun Watson, and get the most out of him. They have to, but I don't know that I'm sitting here like Ken Dorsey's resoundingly going to fix everything and he's going to be the answer. And I almost kind of feel inclined to say, and I've been saying this and writing this over at brownsdigest.com, that I'd rather see Kevin Stefanski keep the play calling because I just trust him more at this point than I trust Ken Dorsey.
Absolutely. And I tend to agree with a lot of that. And what it comes back to for me is like, the point of what are the Browns trying to achieve here? And I think when you watch your division rival, the Baltimore Ravens, go from a good offense under Greg Roman, where they did good things, took a chance, not a chance on, help me.
Tom Munkin?
Munkin, yes, Todd Munkin. Not taking a chance because he's a great coach, but taking a chance on a guy who has a totally different system than what Lamar Jackson has been known to be good at. And they went from a good offense to an incredible offense, right? And one that, got into the AFC title game. So I think when you're watching your rival do that, you're like, hey, we have to try and change something. And the one thing that's missing is stuff going down the football field. And I think that if they do this right, I'm optimistic about it. But if they do it wrong, the downside could be pretty darn bad if it doesn't come together right. But, obviously I'm a little bit more of like, let's go, baby. Chuck that thing down the field.
Well, listen, listen, you're a quarterback. I get it. I'm going to tell people to trust you more than they trust me because you studied the tape a little bit more in depth than I did. You even went back to 2022.
And you covered the Bills, though. So I'm like, oh, God, we got it. We're between, it's an unstoppable force and an immovable odds.
Yeah. There's some interesting angles to this. And listen, there's people who are a lot smarter than me, like yourself, in terms of the X's and O's that I'm like, I'm going to count on you guys to give me even more information on this. And that's why I go to the source, the people who are covering this team previously and what to expect from Ken Dorsey. And we are just trying to shine at least a little bit of light on that for you guys. So What is your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Do you want Kevin Stefanski to keep the play calling? Do you want Ken Dorsey to keep to call the plays? You can let us know in the comments section over at brownsdigest.com. You can also hit us up at the Browns Digest Twitter handle, Browns Digest FN, if you want to jump in on the conversation. But as always, we appreciate you guys following along and tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the content. We'll have other stuff like this coming your way here throughout the offseason, breaking down tape on potential Browns draft picks. Maybe we're going to make it all. We're going to kind of put our heads together, same way Ken Dorsey and Kevin Stefanski are, to sort of figure out some cool ideas for you guys. But as always, be sure to follow along with all things Cleveland Browns over at the Browns Digest YouTube page, and of course at brownsdigest.com.